Let's start with a question. I want to ask any of the attendants that are here with us, have you been impacted by a COVID-related cyber incident? You or the organization that you work for, have you been impacted for a COVID-related cyber incident? This question, I see no as an answer, and this is really surprising because there is one industry that was infected mostly from cyber-related COVID hacking or from anything that happened in the corona crisis, and it is the medical sector. Let's start with some introduction for the CTI League. If I would be able to summarize the CTI League, I might say that the CTI League is the first global volunteering emergency response community worldwide, and I'll speak in a moment about the members that we have in the League. We're defending and neutralizing cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities referring to the life-saving sectors, which mean the medical sector and life-saving organizations such as the emergency organization worldwide. And we would like to neutralize this threat, especially on COVID-19 related cases. But let's start with the story of the CTI League, the genesis of the community that we're about. It all started around January and February, when I started noticing more and more malicious files with the corona crisis, the COVID as a theme, as a layer, in order to tempt the victim to open the files. I said to myself back then that I'm realizing that it's a threat, but not something really severe, because all threat actors using some crises and some global events all the time. But then I thought about NotPetya and WannaCry in 2017. Only 3 years ago, I said to myself, as I saw the increasing of these malicious files, of these malicious attempting to attack organizations, what would happen if in this sensitive time, in its most sensitive time in a century for the medical sector, someone would try to hack an hospital, someone would try to attack an hospital with a ransomware. I thought that this is a real threat. In an equity that I did, I thought, what would happen if some hospital need to have the choice in choosing new ventilator machine to save one person's life, or to choose to pay for a threat actor that uses a ransomware? That was something that I thought it should never happen. Someone need to protect them. I thought, what can I do to make a change? And I remember a really long night drive when I thought, okay, maybe I'll open a community, small community, at least 50 people, that will run some scripts on Shodan or identifying some malwares in the darknet domain or in VirusTotal, for example, cooperate with the organization, and will be able to help them to mitigate some attacks. Only one day after this night drive, when I thought about this idea, I saw that the second biggest hospital in the Czech Republic was targeted and attacked by a ransomware. That was the trigger for me to stop sitting on the fence and do something. I entered Twitter and I saw Nate Warfield tweets. I thought, okay, this is a really nice thing. Nate just ran scripts on Shodan, for example, and identified multiple vulnerabilities in medical organizations worldwide. Why don't we collaborate? Why wouldn't I connect him and send him a message, and we will together we'll open the community? I sent him this message, and we started the CTI League together with Marc Rogers, that here with us, and Chris Miles, that is not. We developed the first global community that aspires to create a safer cyberspace for this organization. When I'm speaking about global community, I need to think, what does it mean global? Why I keep saying it's global community? Because it's an organization, almost an organization, and we operate mainly on the web, on Slack. So why do I call it a global community? And the reason is that map. We have more than 1,500 members from more than 80 countries, 22 time zones. And this is amazing. This is amazing for me as an Israeli to work with people, as you can see on the map, that I can't visit the country. It's not a direct enemy of my country, but these countries have political issue with my country. But together we can fight side by side against this threat and make it change for the people that watch us the most. If you will look at the scales that we shared, some of the numbers, more than 10% of the CTI League are from government organization or LEO, law enforcement organizations. We collaborate with them. We gathered experts from all around the industry, whether they are researchers, incident responders, people that can make a real change for this organization. And we collect them with these organizations, the law enforcement organization. Then we can work fast, we can work in an efficient way, and we can make this change that I'm talking about. So let's talk about the change. What for LSO, medical sector, and life-saving organization? The first thing we aspire to do is reducing the level of threat for this organization. And we do that by preventing cyber attacks. Preventing have multiple ways to do that. The first way is to alert them about some cyber attacks relevant or might be relevant for them. The second one is finding vulnerabilities, compromised assets, data leaks, everything that is related for a specific organization, and we need to alert them in order to reduce the level of threat to them. But that's not enough. We'd like to support them with education, with training. Then and only then, if we will not be able to reduce the level of threat, we'd like to neutralize the cyber threat lawfully. Take down, for example, these malicious assets of the threat actors from the internet will disrupt their ability to conduct the criminal activities of them. So this is neutralization. We want to support law enforcement organizations in their fights against threats that are a danger for the public safety. Scam in the darknet, for example, selling fake test kits, it's not a classic cyber attack, but it's something that we should prevent because it's a real threat for the public safety. But not only health-related harm that we can prevent is something that we want to do. We are ready for the next event, the next global crisis, or the next global activity. And we want to have the intervention team to stop and to help the organization worldwide in these cases. Last but not least, the disinformation. We would like to build a cyber disinformation resilience for this organization. And it's very, very important for us as the CTI League. We want to make a change for these organizations, not only during the Corona crisis days. As we continue to grow, the first month was just a chaos of developing things, staying up at night and making the CTI League assistance map very, very large. Then we realized how dangerous the cyber domain is for this organization, how vulnerable these organizations are, and how much change we, the global community, the industry, companies that used to compete with each other, as we work together, we can make the change that we want to talk about. And from that moment, I want to give the speaking for Nate that will share some of these examples of what the CTI League did in the last 7 months.
So I'm Nate Warfield. My forte has been doing network threat analysis. I've spoken at back in let's see here, it was Cancun in 2018 is when I first met the Kaspersky crew. Very happy to be back. I did a little talking at the first SaaS at Home back in April. And so one of the things that I think we learned is that 2020, what we found, the number of vulnerabilities that are going to be patched this year is going to break pretty much every record. There's something like 25,000 CVEs that have been fixed by September of this year, which is more than were fixed in the entirety of 2019. Some theories that I've had on this, I think a lot of the security research community, as soon as everybody got stuck in the house and couldn't go anywhere, they said, hey, we got a lot of time on your hands. And also there's some, economic instability as far as where your money's coming from. So we did see a lot of vulnerabilities being found, a lot of research being done. But the more unnerving part about this was the amount of time that it's taking. So, if we run the clock back to, say, December of 2019, when we were talking, I was actually where I had met Ohad was in Blue Hat in Israel, talking about the Citrix vulnerability that sort of took the world by storm back before the virus took the world by storm. But that vulnerability took a few weeks before anybody noticed it. It took a while. Once the POC came out, the attack started fairly quickly. What we've been seeing with some of these newer vulnerabilities against network infrastructure is that the POC, or the proof of concept that actually exploits the vulnerability, has been coming out in a matter of days. We saw this in July, or I should say the end of June, beginning of July, with a very severe vulnerability against the devices that are made by F5 networks, where I think we had about 4 days between when the disclosure came out and when we started picking up scanning of people looking for for vulnerable devices. Myself, a bunch of other members of the CTI League worked pretty much the whole 4th of July weekend, which for us in the US is sort of America's birthday. And we were probably ruining a few people's barbecues as we were sending out emails and trying to notify them. But the thing that was good about that is that we did see, as soon as the actual exploit code was uploaded to a framework that Sunday, so the 4th of July being a Saturday, within a few hours, we were seeing actual exploitation. Now, it wasn't that we were seeing it in real time, but as most of us went back to our day jobs, or we started continuing talking in the CTI League the following week, as people were doing forensics on devices that had been compromised, we were seeing, hey, these first attacks are coming in just a matter of hours after this POC had been put into a framework and after the miscreants had figured it out. What is kind of especially spooky about this is that these vulnerabilities, both in the Citrix, the F5 side, they all were basically the same, very similar things. It was past traversal vulnerabilities, also sometimes called directory traversal, against management interfaces, right? These are things that, it's sort of the 90s called. They want their vulnerability back. I've gone around the world trying to tell people to stop plugging everything into the internet, stop exposing your network hardware to the internet. So then every time one of these vulnerabilities comes out, we sort of, there's a bunch of us in the CTI League that sort of jump on the infrastructure side of things and, figure out what's the threat, how many machines are out there that are vulnerable. One of the things we've really gotten good at that I'm super proud about is if we wind the clock back to March, right, when Ohad and I were first talking on Twitter about, he wanted to start the CTI League, what I was staring at was a list of, it was a couple hundred NetScalers and FortiGate devices that were running in hospital networks. And I didn't know how to reach out to anybody, right? I was trying to go through LinkedIn, trying to find admins at different hospitals. I had no idea, how many of them were even going to respond to me. Since in the last, 6-7 months that the CTI League has been going, what we've developed is a really good mental muscle memory on how to handle these things. So now, back even as soon as June, it was only a few months later, as we were working through and figuring out, hey, we found devices, these are running on specific hospital networks, we were able to reach out to some of our partners with health ISAC and medical ISAC groups in the US. We had a few of our members who have existing relationships with some of these hospitals who, we found that, you'd be surprised how hard it is to give away free threat intelligence information, right? We've had times where members would try to go and, best efforts say, hey, we know of a vulnerable system on your network. And we'd be met with anything from, hey, who are you? Why are you looking at my network? Some people thought we were trying to blackmail them. So one of the bigger lessons we learned is that going through established communications routes is the way to get this stuff solved. Even a hospital up here in the Pacific Northwest happens to be the doctor that I use. Once we had gotten the right people in contact with them, they managed to get their machines patched before anything bad happened to them. So that's been good, especially because a lot of these vulnerabilities, the mitigations and things that are coming out with them have been somewhat incomplete. And so there's been a lot of us defenders having to sort of step in and fill in some gaps where the vendors may not have, spent quite as much time telling us how to, defend ourselves against, this new vulnerability that attackers are going to go after. Next slide, please, Ohad. Thanks. So one of the things we've really learned, and it was a lesson that I was hoping I wasn't going to learn, is that infrastructure vulns, we know those things are a favorite. The thing that really bothers me is that nation state and very, very advanced actors are going after these things almost as fast as possible. It seemed that, recently as a year ago, with the original, I think it was the Pulse VPN vulnerability, we did see exploitation, but it was generally like targeted exploitation. It was generally somebody found an entry point, they wanted to get in, they continued doing whatever malfeasance. What we found, at least with the F5 incident, was that it was almost like a race. There was some devices that we looked at that had fingerprints from both Iranian and Chinese actors, right? These actors were sort of stepping all over themselves to get access and take over these devices before either, the other actor got on it or before the admin patched it. So they're able to respond very quickly once the actual exploit code comes out. Like I said, within hours, we were seeing automated attacks going across just big swaths of devices. And it was almost impossible to get ahead of, like, had we not been working through the weekend, there would have been a lot more vulnerable people that have been hit. Even with us working through the weekend, there was people, I'm sure that they probably saw an email from us or from one of our members saying, hey, you have some devices that have been owned. And the next email very well may have been their SOC saying, hey, one of these devices just got owned. So it was a little disheartening. It's been a little frustrating to see that attackers don't keep hospitals off limits. Early on in the year, we thought that people would say, hey, these things are off, these, hospitals are, it's a, no fire zone, if you will. That turns out not to be the case. The miscreants will go after whatever they can. And we've already seen in the last couple of weeks, we've actually seen some fatalities from hospitals that have been ransomware, which is it's very unfortunate. But yeah, we're still seeing, like I said, 90s levels bugs, and the patching, especially from the network side of the house, because these devices are so mission critical, because they're so expensive, and because they aren't generally patched every month, like, pick your operating system of choice. The problem is that these things kind of almost get forgotten, right? There was, in talking with some folks during a different conference, I was talking with a pen tester, and she said, hey, yeah, I saw a device that was still vulnerable to this thing from 2011, an F5 vulnerability that the thing still had unpatched because it was inside the network, and the admins didn't think it was worth patching. So what we're learning is things are somewhat getting better. A lot of things are still the same. I'm going to hand this over to Mark now.
So the other aspect to this that shouldn't come really as a surprise is the other end of the spectrum. Some of the most successful attacks are really the simplest. But what we're seeing now is incredibly sophisticated execution of them. So instead of these scattergun phishing messages that you see, while we still do see those, we're now also seeing phishing messages where they're performing OSINT against target facilities. They're building detail-oriented infrastructure as landing pages, and they're repeating their engagements. If you look at the Twitter hack, the guys who were doing the phishing behind that were continuously tweaking their game and making things better using internal tool landing pages that they found through OSINT as capture pages to trick internal employees to land on them, and then pivoting from those tools into other parts of the network. And what it shows is that this isolation we're all suffering from has eroded the kind of herd immunity we get from being inside a company. Normally you can go to your IT team or your security team to ask for help. Now suddenly endpoint at the actual home is one of the critical points of protection for your entire corporate infrastructure. And the awareness training that we're doing to teach our people to be prepared for this just simply isn't good enough. And we're going to have to evolve it if this is going to become the new normal. And we're going to have to understand how now our employees' homes are part of the attack chain that can lead into our major organizations. And also the smaller organizations that we depend on are becoming major attack points for the larger organizations. which for some of us is not really a huge surprise, but the success that these bad guys are having with it really should bring attention to this. In the case of the campaign that was being used against Twitter, the guys who were actually carrying out the compromises were selling the compromised access for a Bitcoin at a time to anyone who wanted to use it. And we can see these compromised account economies growing, being used to do things like enrich business email compromises and other forms of attack. And I think this problem is going to be here to stay, and it's something that we can only tackle as a community together. Next slide. Nate, so Ohad, thanks. So talking about collaboration, it may surprise some people that, you know, we're a hacker InfoSec community, but we're collaborating with law enforcement. What we found early on was that to deconflict the stuff that we were doing so that we didn't step on anyone's toes, and B, also to get the intelligence we needed to protect institutions, we had to bring these folks on board. The result was actually really surprising. We got a lot of positive engagement from a lot of organizations who just wanted to help. Everyone wanted to come together. I have another poll, which we should probably do now. Do we think that we should collaborate across an industry despite the competitive nature of what we're doing? It's one of the biggest takeaways from this whole CTI League project is that the collaboration across all of these companies and across all of these agencies has led to some impressive effects. And it shows that we can work together. And some companies have been super engaged with us right from the very start. I'd like to give a shout out to Kaspersky, who joined us right in the early days, and other security companies who have donated time, resource, and facilities. As these cybersecurity threats become global problems, the only way we're going to deal with it is if we work together as a global community. And I think this is a good sign of it. And that's probably a good time to bring in Ohad with what we intend to do for the future.
This is the time to speak about the future of the CTI League. The first 4 months of the CTI League were really, really interesting. We worked so much to supply services and focused mostly on the pandemic. I personally really believe that we should build more and more tools to fight the pandemic, but I really hoped that the pandemic will go away, but it didn't. And as we continue to grow, as I said before, we understood how vulnerable these organizations are. We started around the second month to talk about the future of the CTI League. The everyday reality that we experienced in these months let us the thought, what would happen if the CTI League will be real? What would happen if the CTI League won't be a community anymore, not only a community anymore, it will be an organization. And we started to talk about how we formalize the CTI League. Around July, we had the first hackathon of the CTI League. We believe in the community model. We believe in the ability of any member that spend his time, his capability, and we give as the trust of us. We want them to say what they think that the future of the CTI League should be. We open the gate and say, hey, in the hackathon, it's going to be think tanks, talks, hackathon competitions. Join us and let's decide together about the future of the CTI League. In the last 2 months, we worked so much about formalizing the CTI League on the model of an open CERT, non-profit organization, still a community, still volunteer-led, with a space for any member that can contribute specifically on the things that we need the assistance of. We want the experts community of the CTI League to remain the main CTI League baseline. We're speaking about global organization, not only maybe an organization that is headquarters is in one place, but global. We want more countries. As I said before, we have 22 time zones. We want the 2 others to join us. We want to cover every place that we can in order to make a change in the world. We want to focus, again, on the life-saving sector, as the medical sector, the emergency organizations, and to be ready for the next crisis, the next event of the world. We spoke 1 week earlier with Wired team in the Wired 25 conference. Wired magazine chosen the CTI League as one of the main 25 organizations or people that make things different, that make a change in the world. And soon we will publish our first darknet report. Around July, we started to work more in informal ways. Teams that run regular training all the time, they expanding their capabilities in order to supply persistent services. Now it is our time to share the knowledge that we collected in these months, in the 7 months of the CTI League, and present the landscape of threats in the darknet domain. So stay tuned for it. If you want to join the CTI League, please contact us with the following email or on Twitter. Let's talk about collaboration. If you are from a law enforcement organization and we can collaborate with you in order to make the change in the world, please contact us. If you're an expert or a company that can collaborate with us, we are here for you. We really expect you to visit our website at cti-league.com to send us an email, and let's talk about how together the CTI League can make the change that we all aspire, as presented from the pod Marc presented. We should work together for a greater cause. And I think that the Corona crisis learned us that this is the greater cause. Thank you so much for having us here today.
And we have actually a question from Georgi, who is asking, he's saying that he's a CTO of a banking organization. However, they do work with others to share CTI. Can they join the league? Do you have, let's say, some special limitations, or can this banking financial organization join as well and share intelligence with the others? Ohad, can you answer?
Yes, for sure. So, as I said before, we started the CTI League in Twitter, and basically after 5 days of the CTI League, we sent a message on Twitter, on the personal Twitter of Nate and I, and said, hey, if you want to join us, this is the form, before we even have a website. Now, tendency of making the organization more formalized, we have to collect and pick the people that are joining the experts community. So what I'm suggesting, if you hear, and there are a lot of people that are hearing our presentation here, send a message via the email or the Twitter account, send us a message and let's talk together and see if we can collaborate. Or maybe there are other groups that is almost similar to the CTI League, providing other services with other goals. Maybe we can collaborate. We really believe in volunteering, and we really believe in spending time of helping others. So we will do whatever we can to join them for the CTI League or help them to connect with other groups that make a change in the world.
Here's another question for you. Greetings from Greece. Hello, Greece. I want to ask you a question about the CTI League. I'm doing my thesis in risk management, and I want to know if I can get any information from you guys about COVID-related attacks in the COVID era.
Yeah, just please shoot us an email on the email address that we gave. At the end of the day, we're looking to share the information. We anticipate that at the end of this, assuming we do get an end to this COVID annoyance, we will have a ton of extra information to share, and we want to put it out there because we don't think this will be the last pandemic, and we know that cyber attacks are going to constantly evolve and constantly leverage things, and we hope that this information will help make the world safer. So happy to share it.